in my state. Simon Lalong again, representing Plateau South. Mr. President, distinguished senators, to me, I will say I stand with a heavy heart today because of the surrounding events that are happening in the country. Some of us are those who traverse from the executive and run to also this place. I agree entirely with the conclusions of the committee on this issue, and also agree with some of the proposals that we are in an emergency situation. Emergency situation is like you see a house being burned by fire, and the principle is that if fire is there, you don't decide which kind of water to quench the fire. Both the dirty and the good water will be used. You will first quench that fire before you move on to deciding whether it is good or bad water. Number two, the fact that hunger, I agree, does not know tribe. Hunger does not know religion. When there is hunger, the entire thing is about anger. And in that kind of situation, when you get to a stage, it's difficult to contain. That is why some of the principles, because I moved from labor to this place, if some of the agreements are signed were implemented within time, we will not get to this place. I know the content of those agreements with the labor. If those agreements were discussed or were implemented timely, we will not get to this stage. Because most of the things that we are seeing today were all some of the things that Mr. President envisaged. And he said, as soon as we continue with implementation, it will reduce the pressure on the economy. Yes, people can now talk about interpretation. People can talk about economy in different perspectives, both the academic and the non-academic. I always believe that in situations like this, let us embark on practical approach. For me, the practical approach is that let us not be seen to be treating this matter with levity. The executive, federal executive is doing their best. But with this kind of motion, I think that there must be a state of emergency, like somebody said. But my own concept of state of emergency should be that why can't we quickly convene a stakeholders meeting about this, recommend a stakeholders meeting to discuss the practical aspect. Because some of these practical aspects in addressing this issue will go beyond what we see as economic synthesis, and of course my good friend Wadada will also bring. But we're talking about practical realities, the local approach. In that kind of stakeholders approach, the common man, the worker, the ordinary man will be able to see that kind of solution. And until we address this kind of solution, we will not go back to issue of monetary policy. That is when we now have time to talk about monetary policy. Because part of it is, we are talking of agriculture, like my friend from, my colleague from Benue said. We are talking of agriculture. You move to Niger, there are large portions of land that federal government, yes, land belongs, the custody of land is in the hands of the state. But the federal government can make an approach and take over for public policy certain portions of the land and start production of certain crops if we think that can be of help. Security is all they need to deploy to that place. If you go to Plateau, for instance, everybody knows that there is no state that produces potatoes like Plateau. Just like Benue produces yams. You can't get potatoes. Potato is very essential. It is not only mere food, but it's also medicinal. Today, we have a very big crisis in part of Plateau. That is the area that produces potatoes and serves Nigeria. If we really want to make an emergency, part of the security is that I saw that they say they want to establish a barracks. When will they start building a barracks that will address that kind of situation? Is more deployment to allow and escort the farmers back to their farms, they are farming and they are coming back. Otherwise, Mr. President, I know that you would like to eat potato. You are not going to get imported potato. By the end of next year, if there is no potato from Mango and Bokos, you will not see potato in Nigeria again. No, situations like this will require serious situations. I wasn't, yes, I am part of those that just saw the motion for the first time, yes, but the deliberations, like I said, brought out by seasoned experts. The Senator Abiru is a good banker, and they brought out this within a short time. So within a short time, let us look for short measures quickly, so that the man outside will know that something good is being done. Even if it's not good enough, he will know that it is an uncommon approach from an uncommon president of the Senate by uncommon senators to survive and also to rescue Nigeria from this predicament. I so move.
Okay. Let me, I must say that unverified report has it that each of the state governments in the last few months have received additional 30 billion from the Federal Inland Revenue Service outside their normal allocations, from the Federation account, outside their normal allocations, to assist them in ameliorating the food situation. So we believe that every state government should utilize the funds so received towards ensuring that food is available in the country. So the state governments have a lot to do. They are closest to the people. And I don't want to mention local government because most local governments are controlled by the state governors. So my belief is that if the state governments do what is needful, then the local governments in turn will only be involved in sharing to make sure that these things get to the people. But we must not overlook the fact that Nigerians are not going to be interested in stories. Nigerians want to see action. And that is why I commend the joint committees for the recommendations that they have done, and I commend the senators who are constantly going back home almost every weekend to assist to make sure that you reduce whatever sufferings, but assure the people that this government will do everything possible. That's why I said no policy will be exclusive or excluded. This is an emergency situation. Nigerians want to eat food and we are going to provide food for them. The government will have no excuse. Despite what we met on ground, COVID-19 used to kill in Italy alone up to 4,000 people in a day. Most of them were farmers. They couldn't go back to farm. Ukraine, fighting with Russia. 70% of the world's wheat came from Ukraine. And therefore, those things have stopped. The wheat can no longer come. So you don't expect that not to have impact. And then insecurity in the northwest with the vast land. And then, of course, what was happening in the north central. You don't expect that not to have impact when people could not enter their farms. Then, of course, the ways and means and the borrowing of over 30 trillion without necessary earnings by the CBN vis-a-vis the federal government. And then the global economic situation where even United Kingdom has announced recession. So I think people need to be patient with government, but rather look at what we are doing as a Senate and as a National Assembly. We cannot sit back and allow our people to be hungry. And so we must do everything. If what we are producing right now is not sufficient, we can't sit back and say, oh, no importation by the private sector. No importation. If we need to even look at the issue of closure of borders, we should do so. If that will assist us to make sure that food is available. Because even now, with the little you have, tons and tons of food are being taken across the borders every night. Yes, at the moment the CFA is stronger than the Naira. So people are rushing to go and sell their food products in CFA and not in Naira. So we are going to look at every issue. And that is why I applaud the Senate, I applaud the Joint Committee, And I'm saying if the recommendations are not far enough, we will do so. And thereafter, we'll still have a small committee of leadership to go further and discuss with Mr. President to make sure that everything that we need to do, we do so to make sure that Nigerians are happy. Because they voted for us, they don't want excuses despite the global economic recession. All they want is to see food on their table, and food we shall give to them. Security we must give to them. I also join you to commend the security services for the reduction in crime across the board. And I also mentioned in our closed session the other day, we were happy to hear that almost all of those who caused insecurity in Abuja, including the killers of that young lady they called Nebena, have all been apprehended and are in detention. So a lot of things are getting improved, and we must continue to improve and work on it despite what is happening globally. The war in Gaza is also a problem and all that, and then even the war in Sudan and other areas, and then of course the insecurity in the nations around us, our neighboring places, and then the climate change and all that. But I commend you for this, and let us go straight into the recommendations and see whether they are far-reaching enough. Thank you for what you have done.